Salutations, respected viewers. I'm George from Ireland, and here I am at Hampton Court Palace in London again. So giving you an idea of the scape of the grounds before I go in. Anyway, just carrying on where I left off. So after Henry VIII, other monarchs lived here. Mary Tudor, his daughter, when she thought she was pregnant, she came here, thinking this would be a healthy location to give birth to her baby, far away from London. They didn't want two people around, and there's plague there sometimes. But anyway, it turned out to be a phantom pregnancy, exhibiting all the signs but not actually being pregnant. A very rare condition where if a woman desperately wants to become pregnant, she can sometimes fool herself. It's sort of psychosomatic, and that was that. And of course, at the end, she was feeling, she was vomiting in the morning, and she was feeling, well, indisposed, low energy, swelling in that area. Of course, it was ovarian cancer, but she didn't know that at the time. So anyway, so I'll show you a bit more. Then William III took over, William of Orange, or much later, of course, 1688 and all that, and his wife and first cousin, Queen Anne. They were joint sovereigns, William and Mary, as in that college in the United States, William and Mary. They started to rebuild it very extensively, and he raised a lot of the Tudor work and built on the same site. So when I say raised, I don't mean lifted, like leveled it, because he wanted to build something that could look Versailles in the face. Of course, this is at the time when France was la grande nation, the mightiest state in Europe. Of course, the British Overseas Empire hadn't really taken off. There were a few Caribbean islands, a few trading posts on the coast of India. The British ports on the coast of Africa were mere pimples on the continent. So France was much more puissant and wealthier. It didn't quite achieve it. It's not so splendid as Versailles, but it does at least have all its furniture because, after the French Revolution, so much of the furniture was plundered. If you go to Versailles, you'll see that many of the rooms are largely empty. And so people just looted the place. Obviously, France has been through a number of upheavals and revolutions, but I shan't describe them all here. So there's this cloister, and incidentally, if you go back prior to 1515, the Order of St. John of Jerusalem had owned the property, and I think there might have been a monastery on the site before it was some sort of a palace. Okay, so that was very popular. A little garden in there, fountain, and obviously it admits light to the courtyard, because otherwise these inner buildings wouldn't have any inner rooms wouldn't have any light. All right, so there are really two distinct areas to Hampton Court Palace. There's the Baroque area where we are now. Probably a bit too bright, actually. I'll make it darker. You'll see things better. There's this Baroque area, and then there's the Tudor area. How do I angle it so you can see what I'm pointing about? And anyway, so various monarchs lived here after that. George II was the last one to reside here. And after that, the Hanoverians, they preferred to spend most of their time at Kensington Palace. And indeed, William III has spent a lot of his time at Kensington Palace. William III, who's Prince of Orange, or he was Stadtholder of the Netherlands, as in literally state holder. So their head of state was not president or king or anything like that, it was Stadtholder, and indeed it wasn't a heritable position, but the Orange family, they managed to hold that for several centuries, have the 12 provinces of the Netherlands each elect them state holder for several generations, until after the Napoleonic Wars, the Dutch said, well, let's go to the whole hog. These people are monarchs in all but official designation, so we'll simply say, yes, that they are the king. And so there's the King of the Netherlands, and the Orange family is the royal family. And that's why the heir to the throne, she's the Princess of Orange. If it's a boy, of course, it's Prince of Orange, but the current King of the Netherlands, Willem-Alexander, he's got 3 daughters, he has no sons. Okay, so anything else I'd like to point out about this? Yeah, so the bit that Cardinal Wolsey built, he did try to do it in a very continental style, building a piano nobile, which is slightly raised, so he could impress his visitors, clergy from Italy in particular. Of course, Italy wasn't a united country, it wasn't quite clear where Italy was, but there were many Italian states. But he actually used to communicate with them in Latin, and they with each other in Latin some of the time. Look at the royal coat of arms, Dieu et mon droit. God on my right, the 2 supporters that hold the crown are angels. So there is a chapel royal here, and indeed there is public worship here. The only way you can get in for free is on certain Sundays of the year. You can attend worship. You can't walk around the whole place. You can walk more or less straight here. HR, look, Henricus Rex, King Henry, the 2 angels, the royal coat of arms, the fleur de lis of France. He claimed to be king of France. He tried to make the reality match the theory. He looked back to his namesake Henry V, who'd achieved a fantastic victory in France fewer than 100 years earlier, and that's why he began one of his 3 lengthy and disastrous wars against France. Although he did gain land, it was about 1% of France's land mass, and it completely wasn't worth it in terms of the number of people killed or the amount of treasure expended on it. He could never match France, and he spent something like a whole year's budget on this big blowout of the field of cloth of gold when he met his opposite number, the King of France, dressing as Hercules, having wrestling matches, fountains of wine. It was really disgusting when most people were malnourished to splurge so much money on sheer ostentation. So he was like some sort of Central Asian tyrant would be today, or like Trump actually. An oversized toddler in his behaviour. So yeah, you can see obviously we're back down to the Tudor area, and here it is a bit more like the monastery that it originally was. I'm not sure if any of that still exists. You can see a bit of the foundations in some of the stonework of the courtyards of where the original monastery used to be, and then which then turned into a big home for I'm not quite sure who. Get the idea? A privy kitchen back there is a private kitchen. Another dining room. So this is it. As it would have been like. Okay, where the huge fireplace would have been. And had to have candles up there. They're not candles anymore, I'm afraid. How much they try to stick with realism, they've got to bear in mind. They've got to bear in mind the fire regulations these days. So not too drafty if you come into these cloisters. So the idea of cloisters, you can go get some fresh air, walk around, some light exercise without being rained upon. And there's some people who live in the palace to this day who are involved in the administration thereof. Anyway, I wonder what else you might like to know. Ooh, and they're under King Henry's windows. They're a fair and pleasant garden. And see, look at these heraldic symbols here. The greyhound, this gold lion, the dragon, the bull, and so forth. So that's obviously a bit of the Tudor palace. So they've obviously had to replace things a lot over the centuries. For more than 500 years, occasionally, the brickwork is giving way, so they have to rebuild it. So can we say it's the same palace? Back the way we came. Anyway, so I don't know more about it really. But you'll have some idea of the scale of the place and how exhilarating it is to walk around. I'm doing a relatively fast tour because I've got to be somewhere at 5:30, and that's quite a few miles away. You can get an audio guide to listen to, and there's some historical interpreters. There are these guides with these red sashes or red cloaks who'll tell you anything, and some of them speaking other languages, speaking German to one of the ladies. Ooh, I think the school kids are having a tour in there. I better not disturb them. Telling him how the kitchen works. So it is huge, and I'm not even showing you all of the place. And I'm walking fairly fast, as you can possibly tell. Look at the windows. Not many windows back then. There's open spaces because glass was so expensive. Oh, okay. School lunch parties only. So there'll be whole herds of school children taking packed lunches with them. What else might you want to know? So a bit of added realism, these carts. I mean, imagine how much food had to be delivered here each day, so quite difficult to organise. The cofferer in charge of that. Sometimes a constable left in charge of a castle. I know it's a palace, not a castle, when the king couldn't be here, so that's a very high position. Originally there was a steward in charge of obviously serving food to the king and queen, or the lord and lady of any castle, but he was like the head servant. But then he had to see how there was sufficient provisions there, especially if there's a siege. So steward became quite an important job. But that's why steward is like a really high-class barman, or there's an air steward, or indeed stewardess. And it became a surname, Steward or Stewart. And then obviously Robert the Bruce's daughter Marjorie married his steward, supposedly descended from Banquo, the chap who's mentioned in Macbeth that his sons will be kings. Well, many generations his descendants were kings, that's the idea. And that's why the Scots royal family had the surname Steward. And during Mary Queen of Scots' time in France, the spelling was Gallicised to Stuart, S-T-U-A-R-T. They couldn't cope with the W, the French. the Lord Chamberlain's Court. So Chamberlain is in charge of a bedroom, a chamber. I remember that Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain. When I was little, I thought, oh, was he called Chamberlain because he was like the Lord Chamberlain? But no, someone in charge of, well, it could be just like a chambermaid except a man just making beds in a hotel or something. It could have been as lowly as that. But Neville was the name of a noble family in the 15th century. And well, that's the Earl of Warwick, Kingmaker Warwick, that was his surname. But the 19th century, choosing these noble family surnames as a Christian name became a popular thing. All right, I shall switch it off now. That's just given you some idea of how enormous this place is. All right, so goodbye from Hampton Court, and everybody, make sure you subscribe.